He was the guy everyone loved. Always smiling. Always there for others. Always laughing. But every night, when his apartment door closed behind him, that smile disappeared. For 3 years, he carried a weight no one could see. And the day someone finally noticed, it almost came too late. This is his story. The alarm buzzed at exactly 6:15 in the morning, the same way it had for the past 1100 days. Marcus Thompson reached over and silenced it without opening his eyes. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, watching the early morning light creep through the blinds like unwelcome visitors. Another day. He took a deep breath and forced himself upright. His feet hit the cold floor, and for a moment, he just sat there on the edge of his bed. The silence of the apartment pressed against him like a physical thing. He could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic beginning to build on the street below. 45 minutes. That's how long it took him to transform. Shower. Shave. Iron his shirt until it was crisp. Select a tie. Check his reflection. And then the final step. The most important step. Smile. He practiced it in the mirror every single morning. He would pull up the corners of his mouth, crinkle his eyes just slightly, and hold it until it felt natural. Until it looked natural. Until anyone who saw it would believe that Marcus Thompson was the happiest man in the city. By 7 o'clock he was out the door. The walk to the subway took exactly 12 minutes. Along the way, he passed Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor, who was always sitting on her porch with her small gray cat. "Morning, Marcus," she called out, waving her wrinkled hand. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," he replied, his voice warm and friendly. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Every day is beautiful when you're still breathing, dear." He laughed. A genuine-sounding laugh that he had perfected over years of practice. "That's the spirit. You have a wonderful day now." She smiled back at him and he continued walking. The subway was crowded as always. Bodies pressed together in uncomfortable proximity. But Marcus didn't mind. In a strange way, he preferred the crowd. When you're surrounded by strangers, no one really looks at you. No one really sees you. You become just another face in the mass of humanity, anonymous and invisible. He arrived at the office at exactly 8:15. Carter and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm on the 17th floor of a glass building downtown. He had worked there for 7 years, starting as an entry-level assistant and working his way up to senior account manager. Everyone knew Marcus. Everyone liked Marcus. "There he is," called out Jerome from across the open floor. "The man, the myth, the legend." Marcus raised his hand in greeting, his smile already in place. "Jerome, my man. How was the weekend?" "Not as good as yours, apparently. You're practically glowing." "What can I say? Life is good." The words came out so easily now. They didn't even feel like lies anymore. They were just sounds he made, responses that had become automatic after years of repetition. He made his way to his desk, exchanging greetings with colleagues along the way. He asked about Veronica's daughter's soccer game. He congratulated Mike on his engagement. He complimented Sandra on her new haircut. Each interaction was smooth, practiced, effortless, and exhausting. By the time he sat down at his desk, he felt like he had run a marathon. The smile remained, but behind it, something heavy settled in his chest. A weight that never fully lifted, no matter how many hours of sleep he got or how many happy exchanges he performed. His computer hummed to life, and he began responding to emails. His hands moved across the keyboard automatically while his mind drifted somewhere else entirely. 3 years. It had been 3 years since the phone call that changed everything. 3 years since his mother's voice, weak and trembling, had told him that she was sick. 6 months later she was gone. And something inside Marcus had gone with her. He had stood at her funeral with that same smile on his face. He had shaken hands with relatives, accepted their condolences, and assured everyone that he was doing okay. He was strong, they said. So strong. But he wasn't strong. He was just good at pretending. The grief had never left him. It had simply burrowed deep inside, finding a dark corner of his heart where it could live undisturbed. Most days he could ignore it. He could push through the numbness, go through the motions, be the Marcus that everyone expected him to be. But some days were harder than others. Today was one of those days. "Hey, Marcus." He looked up to find Elena Rodriguez standing at the edge of his cubicle. She was the company's creative director, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper intuition. She had been at Carter & Associates almost as long as he had, and over the years they had developed an easy friendship. "Elena," he said, the smile instantly returning. "What's up? A bunch of us are grabbing lunch later. Thai place around the corner. You in?" "Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it." She nodded, but she didn't walk away immediately. Instead, she stood there for a moment, studying him with those perceptive eyes of hers. "You okay?" she asked, her voice softening slightly. His heart skipped. Just for a second his smile faltered. But he recovered quickly, easily. "Yeah, of course. Why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. You just seem different lately. Quieter maybe." "Quieter? Me?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Elena, you've known me for 7 years. When have I ever been quiet?" She smiled back, but there was something uncertain in her expression. Like she wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. "Fair enough," she said finally. "See you at lunch." She walked away, and Marcus turned back to his computer screen. His hands were trembling slightly. He clenched them into fists beneath his desk, waiting for the shaking to stop. That had been close. Too close. He couldn't let anyone see. Not Elena. Not Jerome. Not anyone. Because if they saw the truth, everything would fall apart. The carefully constructed facade he had built would crumble, and he would be left standing in the wreckage of his own making. It was better this way. Better to smile. Better to laugh. Better to pretend that everything was fine. Even when it wasn't. The morning dragged on. Meetings. Conference calls. Presentations. Marcus moved through each one with practiced ease, saying the right things, making the right jokes, being the Marcus that everyone expected. But inside, the emptiness grew. He thought about his mother. About the way she used to laugh, really laugh, with her whole body. About the way she would call him every Sunday morning, no matter what, just to check in. About the way she had looked at him in those final weeks. Her eyes still full of love even as her body failed her. He missed her. God, he missed her. But he couldn't say that. He couldn't tell anyone how the grief still hit him in waves, unexpected and overwhelming. He couldn't explain how some mornings he had to force himself out of bed because the thought of facing another day felt like climbing a mountain. He couldn't admit that behind the smile he was drowning, because admitting it would mean being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant being weak. And Marcus Thompson was not weak. At least that's what he told himself. Lunch came and went. The Thai restaurant was loud and crowded, and Marcus laughed and joked with his colleagues as if he didn't have a care in the world. Elena watched him from across the table, that same uncertain look in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. When he got home that evening, he closed the door behind him and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The smile faded. The laughter died. And he was left alone with the silence and the shadows. He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Thousands of people living their lives, carrying their own burdens. How many of them, he wondered, were pretending just like him? How many smiles hid broken hearts? He stood there for a long time, watching the lights flicker on in distant windows. And then, finally, he went to bed. Tomorrow he would wake up and do it all again. The weeks that followed blurred together into a haze of routine. Wake up. Mail. Work. Mail. Come home. Collapse. Sleep. Repeat. Marcus moved through his days like a man underwater, every movement slow and heavy, every breath an effort. Nobody noticed. Or at least that's what he thought. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Elena appeared at his desk again. This time, she didn't have an invitation to lunch or a casual question about work. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching him with that intense gaze that always made him feel exposed. "What's going on with you?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked up from his computer, his smile already forming. "What do you mean? Don't do that." "Do what?" "That thing you do, where you pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't." His smile wavered, just for a moment, just enough for her to see. "Elena, I appreciate the concern, but I'm really okay. Just tired. Work has been crazy lately, you know." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pulled up a chair and sat down across from him, lowering her voice so that the nearby colleagues couldn't hear. "Marcus, I've known you for 7 years. 7 years. And in all that time, I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Like you're going through the motions. Like you're here but not really here." She paused, searching for the right words. "You smile but it doesn't reach your eyes anymore. You laugh but it sounds hollow. I can't explain it, but something is off." His throat tightened. The facade was cracking, and he could feel the pressure building behind it, threatening to break through. "I'm fine," he said again, but even he could hear how weak the words sounded. Elena leaned forward. "I'm not trying to push you. I just want you to know that if you ever need to talk, I'm here. No judgment. No expectations. Just a friend who cares." For a long moment, Marcus couldn't speak. He wanted to tell her. God, he wanted to tell someone. The loneliness was suffocating him, and the weight of his secret felt like it was crushing his chest. But the words wouldn't come. "Thanks, Elena," he managed finally. "I appreciate that. Really." She nodded slowly, and he could tell she wasn't satisfied with his response. But she didn't press further. She simply squeezed his shoulder gently and walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. That night Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he found himself walking through the city, past the familiar streets and into neighborhoods he had never explored. The autumn air was cool against his skin, and the sound of his footsteps echoed on the empty sidewalks. He walked for hours, past closed shops and quiet houses, past parks where couples sat on benches, lost in their own worlds, past bars and restaurants where laughter spilled out onto the street. Everyone looked so happy, so connected, so alive, and he felt like a ghost, drifting through their world without ever truly being a part of it. Eventually, he found himself at the river. He stood at the edge of the walkway, watching the dark water move slowly beneath the bridge. The lights of the city reflected on its surface, shimmering and beautiful. He thought about his mother again, about how she used to bring him here when he was young. They would walk along the river, and she would tell him stories about her own childhood, about dreams she had never pursued, about the importance of living fully and loving deeply. "Don't ever let life make you hard," she had told him once. "Feel everything, even the pain. Because the pain is proof that you're alive." But he didn't want to feel anymore. Feeling hurt too much. It was easier to numb himself, to put on the smile, to pretend that everything was fine. It was easier, but it was also killing him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a text from his younger brother, Daniel. "Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. You okay?" Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Daniel was 10 years younger, just 23, still figuring out his place in the world. After their mother's death, Marcus had stepped into a paternal role, trying to be the rock that Daniel could lean on. He had been so focused on being strong for his brother that he had never allowed himself to grieve properly. He typed a response. "Yeah, all good here. Just busy with work. Let's catch up soon." The lie came as easily through text as it did in person. He put the phone back in his pocket and continued staring at the water. What would happen, he wondered, if he just told the truth? If he admitted to Daniel, to Elena, to anyone that he was struggling? That he hadn't really been okay since the funeral? That some days, getting out of bed felt like the hardest thing in the world? The thought terrified him. He had spent his entire life being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who held everything together. If he admitted weakness, would people see him differently? Would they think less of him? Would they pull away, unable to handle the burden of his pain? These were the questions that kept him silent. The fears that kept the mask in place. But the mask was getting heavier, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could carry it. The next day at work, Marcus forced himself to be even more cheerful than usual. He cracked jokes, organized an impromptu coffee run, and volunteered to help with a project that wasn't even his responsibility. He overcompensated, throwing himself into the performance with desperate energy. By the end of the day, he was exhausted. More exhausted than he had ever been. He was packing up to leave when Jerome stopped by his desk. "Hey Marcus, a few of us are heading to the bar around the corner. Drinks on me. You coming?" Marcus hesitated. Every part of him wanted to go home to close the door, to escape the constant effort of pretending. But if he said no, they might wonder why. They might ask questions. "Yeah," he said, forcing the smile once more. "Sounds great." The bar was loud and crowded. Marcus sat with his colleagues, nursing a drink he didn't really want, laughing at jokes he didn't really find funny. He watched them interact, these people who seemed so comfortable in their own skin, so at ease with their lives. Did any of them feel the way he did? Did any of them go home to empty apartments and lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if tomorrow would be any better? Or was he the only one? Elena caught his eye from across the table. She raised her glass slightly in acknowledgement, and he raised his in return. But even from that distance, he could tell she was watching him, studying him, trying to figure out what was wrong. He looked away, afraid of what she might see. The night wore on. People drifted home, one by one, until only a few remained. Marcus was about to leave when Elena slid into the seat next to him. "You don't have to pretend with me," she said softly. "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are. And I know you have your reasons. I'm not going to force you to open up." She paused, taking a sip of her drink. "But I want you to know something. Whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone." The words hit him like a wave. He felt something crack inside him, some small piece of the wall he had built around his heart. "Elena, He stopped. The words were there, right on the tip of his tongue. 3 years of pain, of silence, of loneliness. All he had to do was let them out. But he couldn't. "I should get going," he said instead, standing abruptly. "Early meeting tomorrow." Elena didn't try to stop him. She just watched as he walked away, disappearing into the cold night air. Outside, Marcus stood on the sidewalk, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking again. His heart was pounding. He had almost let her in. He had almost told her the truth. But the fear was too strong. The habit of hiding was too ingrained. He walked home alone, the darkness wrapping around him like a familiar blanket. Marcus woke up that morning and couldn't move. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. His body felt like lead. His mind felt like fog. For the first time in 3 years, he couldn't summon the energy to put on the mask. He thought about calling in sick to life. Just staying in bed, letting the world continue without him, disappearing into the silence of his apartment. But then his phone rang. It was Daniel. Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Hey yourself," Daniel said, his voice bright and young. "I'm in the city. Thought I'd stop by. Got time for your little brother?" Marcus closed his eyes. The last thing he wanted was company. But Daniel was already on his way, and he couldn't bring himself to turn him away. "Yeah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come on over." 40 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Marcus forced himself up, threw on some clothes, and opened it to find Daniel standing there with a bag of bagels and a wide grin. "Breakfast is served," Daniel announced, walking past him into the apartment. Marcus followed him to the kitchen, watching as his brother unpacked the bagels and started making coffee like he owned the place. Daniel had always been the lighter one of the two, The one who laughed easily and never seemed burdened by life's weight. Or maybe he was just better at hiding it. "So," Daniel said, spreading cream cheese on a bagel. "What's new with you?" "Not much. Same old, same old." "Come on, Marcus. You gotta give me more than that. How's work? How's life? You seeing anyone?" The questions came rapid fire, and Marcus answered them automatically. Work was fine. Life was fine. No, he wasn't seeing anyone. Everything was fine. But as he spoke, he noticed Daniel watching him. That same look Elena had given him. That same quiet concern. "You don't look fine," Daniel said finally. Marcus's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean you look tired. Really tired. Like you haven't slept in weeks." Daniel set down his bagel and turned to face his brother fully. "Marcus, talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about." "That's not true, and we both know it." The room fell silent. Marcus could feel the pressure building again, the same pressure he had felt with Elena. The walls he had built were cracking, and this time, he didn't know if he had the strength to hold them together. "I'm fine, Daniel." "You're not fine." Daniel's voice rose, surprising them both. "You haven't been fine since Mom died. I've watched you pretend for 3 years. I've watched you smile and laugh and act like nothing happened. But I know you, Marcus. I know something's wrong." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his throat close up, felt the sting of tears he hadn't allowed himself to cry in 3 years. "I didn't want to worry you," he managed. "That's not your job. You're my brother, not my parent." Daniel stepped closer, his voice softening. "We're supposed to worry about each other. That's what family does." Something inside Marcus finally broke. Not violently, but gently, like ice melting in the spring sun. "I miss her," he whispered. "I miss her so much, and I don't know how to live without her." Tears came then. Slow at first, and then faster, until he was sobbing in a way he hadn't allowed himself to in years. Daniel crossed the distance between them and wrapped his arms around his brother, holding him tight. "I know," Daniel said quietly. "I miss her too." They stood there for a long time, two brothers holding each other in a small kitchen, letting the grief flow freely for the first time. When the tears finally subsided, they sat down at the table together. Marcus felt raw, exposed, vulnerable. But he also felt lighter than he had in years. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Daniel asked. "Because I thought I had to be strong. For you. For everyone." Marcus shook his head. "After Mom died, I didn't know how to process it. So I just pushed it down. I told myself if I kept smiling, kept showing up, eventually the pain would go away. But it didn't. No. It just got heavier." Daniel reached across the table and placed his hand on his brother's arm. "You don't have to carry this alone. You never did." For the first time in 3 years, Marcus allowed himself to believe that might be true. The weeks that followed were not easy. Healing never is. Marcus started seeing a therapist, something he had resisted for years out of pride and fear. He began opening up to Elena, to Daniel, to the people who cared about him. It was terrifying admitting that he wasn't okay. But with each conversation, with each moment of honesty, the weight grew a little lighter. He still had hard days. Days when the grief hit him unexpectedly, when the loneliness crept back in, when the old urge to hide behind a smile returned. But he was learning to sit with those feelings instead of running from them. He was learning that vulnerability was not weakness but courage. One evening, he found himself back at the river. But this time he wasn't alone. Elena stood beside him, and Daniel was on his other side. They watched the water move beneath the bridge, the city lights dancing on its surface. "Mom would have loved this," Marcus said quietly. "She's still with you," Daniel replied. "She always will be." Marcus nodded. For the first time in 3 years he believed that too. He thought about all the people out there who were doing what he had done. Smiling when they wanted to cry. Laughing when they wanted to scream. Pretending to be okay when they were falling apart inside. And he made a silent promise. He would be the person who noticed. He would be the friend who asked the hard questions and listened to the answers. He would never let someone feel as alone as he had felt. Because he had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the people who smile the brightest are the ones who need to be seen the most. And sometimes the simple act of listening can save someone's life. Marcus looked up at the sky, at the stars barely visible through the city lights, and he smiled. This time it was real.